7 of the top 10 defenses drafted in fantasy football last year finished outside of the top 10 in total fantasy points. That's why you come here to the Faceoff Sports Network, because we are going to do our best to provide you weekly winning edges at the DST position in fantasy football right here on the Faceoff Sports Network. Okay, guys, so if you are new to the show, we do 25% owned or less for the 3 defenses that we're going to give out that are streamers. Reason being is we want to make sure that they are available in majority of fantasy football formats, especially in deeper leagues. And what I'm going to do is at the end of the video or the back half of the video, I'm going to also go in depth into my rankings. So you're going to be able to see where the streamers that I provided today, where they stack up in my rankings for the week. And if those defenses that maybe you think are better, that are streamable, are available in your leagues, you'll be able to see where I have those stacked up against my streamers that I have in today's episode. The rankings are going to change throughout the week because I'm dropping these videos early on this season. I'm condensing them into one. And so as they change, they'll be at the Discord link at the bottom of the video below. I'm also updating them on Twitter. I'm going to send them to the community page as well on YouTube here. And I'm also going to answer your questions in the comments below on YouTube as we gear up towards week 1, as we're getting right up to kickoff. And then as we go into this here, I always look at point totals, home teams, and low EPA totals. And so we don't have the EPA just yet because the season hasn't started, but we do have point totals, we do have home teams, and we have a couple of other edges that I'm going to go over today. And so the first defense that we're looking at is the Commanders, right? Commanders are 21% owned across fantasy formats. They take on the New York Giants. This is a 45.5 point total. This is also a home team, and they're 6-point favorites in this matchup against the Giants. Giants is set at 19.5 team total points. And there's some newness with this team, right? You have Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson over the last 3 seasons, one thing he's very good at is taking sacks. Russell Wilson in 2024 averaged 3 sacks per game. In 2023, 3 sacks per game. And in 2022, 3.6 sacks per game. He's practically giving us a floor of 3 total sacks per game. And for fantasy, that's what we're looking for: sacks, turnovers, and then, of course, low yardage, low point totals. All that stuff factors in and helps. But how you get spikes in points is those turnovers, right? And so the turnovers and the sacks, Russ can definitely provide us. And that's why I'm targeting them. I think they're a high floor defense here. Maybe not as much upside because there's not as much talent on this defense as some of the other defenses we're going to talk about today. But I really, really like them in this matchup. Giants offensive line ranks 25th overall on FTN coming into the year. And they returns all 5 starters. And last season, when Andrew Thomas was in this lineup before his injury, right, they were giving up 2.3 sacks per game. So still giving a solid number of sacks to the opposing defenses. And I still think that this offense line could be pretty messy, and Russell Wilson's going to do them no favors. When we look at the Commanders, that defense year 2 in Dan Quinn's system, they brought in Von Miller. They also brought in Javon Kinlaw in free agency, and then they drafted Trey Amos in the 2nd round. I expect the Commanders to play time controlled football, right? The time of possession is going to be very, very favorable on their side. And I think overall, the Giants are going to have to probably play from behind, which means they're going to be in passing down situations, which I think personally is going to lead to Russ taking some sacks, taking some chances, which should bode well for this Commanders defense in fantasy for us this week. Let's move over to our next defense, though, and it's going to be the Rams, who take on the Houston Texans. You see Jared Verse there jumping on to Sam Darnold there, and that's what we're hoping for this week, taking on a Houston Texans offense that gave up a ton of pressure last year. This is a 44.5 point total, and it's a home team as well. So we get both of those things, which is absolutely awesome for us. The Rams are -2.5 favorites. Houston comes into town with a 20.5 team total per Vegas, and it's a new offensive system, right? I think that's the biggest thing for me here is there's a lot of moving parts. It's a new offensive system. Nick Caley comes in from the Rams, and he's a first-time offensive coordinator. When you look at last season, This team in the Houston Texans ranked fifth in quarterback pressure percentage at 37.9%. That's a lot. That's practically saying every third pass the quarterback is getting pressured on. And I mean, only returning one starter to this offensive line, I think it's probably, if not the worst, one of if not the worst units in the NFL. And four new players. So there's a new system, new players on the offensive line, and Joe Mixon's not going to be out there for week one. We're talking about Nick Chubb, who is not the old Nick Chubb that we saw on the Browns years ago. We see Woody Marks maybe getting into the mix, maybe Damian Pierce. I think the run game could be a little bit of an issue for them, and it might put them into passing down situations. Now, the floor is still there for them because I expect them to get sacks, but I do worry a little bit about this play because the Texans do have some talent. CJ Stroud is good. They have some good weapons. Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel. They drafted some good players there. And overall, is some talent at the skill position here, but I think they match up really well when you factor in that this is an offensive line that gives up a ton of pressure, and this is a Rams defense that ranked 10th in quarterback pressure percentage in 2024. So you have a top 5 offense in giving up pressures, and then a top 10 defense in generating pressure percentage, right? Obviously that's last year, but a lot hasn't changed for the Rams. That defense looks similar, and the changes that have happened for Houston at the offensive line position, we don't even know if that's going to be a good thing or not. And we can expect them to maybe start off a little bit slower because it's a new system and a lot of new faces. So I like this play with the Rams this week. It is a high upside play. The floor is a little bit lower than maybe some of the other defenses that we'll talk about, but I like the play here. It's year 2 under Chris Shula's defense for the Rams. And this is a defense in the Rams that, as the year went on, the defense got better and better. Brendan Fisk and Jared Verse were really, really strong as rookies. This defense returns pretty much all of their starters from last year, and they also added Poona Ford to the nose tackle position, which should help clog up the middle of that offense or defense as well. And so I think it's a really, really high upside play with some risk there, and you'll see where I have them ranked at the end of this video in my total rankings. And then moving on here to the New York Jets, 4.5% owned across fantasy formats. 38.5 is the lowest point total on the week, and that goes to this game right here. We get home dogs, actually. They're not the favorites. The Steelers are -3 in this one, but really low point total gives us a really, really strong floor. And then on top of that, you also get a home team. So I like the matchup here. Let's dig into this one a little bit. You have a new quarterback in Aaron Rodgers and some new faces in this room, right? Aaron Rodgers doesn't turn the ball over a ton, which is why I think that the ceiling might not be there nearly as much for the Jets because Rodgers is not a guy that typically does turn the football over a ton, but he could take a few sacks, right? This is a guy that's not super mobile at this stage in his career. He was sacked 2.3 times per game last year, but he gets the ball out very, very quick. And so we'll see if that's the case in this offense. I don't expect him to hold the ball a ton, and he's going to try to get the ball out quick, but will guys be on the same page, right? In this new offense, new players with him, around him. It's not like Devontae Adams is back with him and, he gets to kind of have that rapport. Even with Garrett Wilson last year, Wilson and him, they kind of had a rapport because even if they didn't play with each other, they knew each other for an entire year and kind of got some practice in even before he got hurt. So there was some rapport built there, but when you look at this matchup here, the Jets, Aaron Glenn, new play caller here for the New York Jets. I expect him to be a very, very nice addition, at least for their defense. And this is a defense that, look, they could struggle because it's a newer defense of system, but it's also going up against an offense that has some newer faces as well. And it's still a very talented defense. They did lose Reed, but they added guys like Harrison Phillips on the line. And I think there's a lot of talent here. I think it's going to be a slog of a game. I think it's going to be low scoring and pretty ugly. But overall, I expect this to be a very, very safe pick in the New York Jets this week, and that's going to be my last streamer. I'll go ahead and move over to our defensive rankings now. In Tier 1, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, Denver Broncos, and Minnesota Vikings. And obviously, I'm a Broncos fan, guys, so people might have expected me to have the Broncos here at number 1, but that's not the case for me here. I like the Steelers matchup, and the Steelers, we just talked about the Jets. The Steelers play the Jets, and it's going to be a very, very low scoring game. Justin Fields in a new offense. I expect it to be very, very messy. This defense knows Justin Fields very, very well, similar to how the Jets defense knows the Aaron Rodgers very, very well. But I expect this defense that did make some improvements this year, right? They brought in some players on the back end. I expect that defense that's healthy to play much better than we saw last year, especially down the stretch last year. They were a little bit tougher to watch. They lost a little bit of steam, but they also had some injuries. But I have them at 1. And then I have the Denver Broncos here at 2. It's the second lowest point total on the week. The Denver Broncos get the Titans at home. It's a rookie quarterback. Vance Joseph gets a rookie quarterback with one of the best, if not the best, defense in the NFL. I think it's a very good spot for the Broncos. What I would say, I do worry a little bit about that run defense for Denver. We'll see how it shakes out, but ultimately, I think it's a very, very strong play with the Denver Broncos defense. And just because I don't have them ranked at number 1 here, doesn't mean you should be worried. They're still ranked number 2, and I expect a really, really strong outing by them. And then we have the Minnesota Vikings at 3. Minnesota Vikings, when we talk about that defense, it's a blitz heavy defense. They love to get to the quarterback, and they play the Chicago Bears, right? They're on the road here against the Bears, against Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams took a ton of sacks last season. And in the 2 matchups that we saw these teams play last year, they sacked the quarterback 5 times. And I think there could be some growing pains here with Ben Johnson and this offense, right? With Caleb Williams, there were some flashes in the preseason, and then there were some low lights as well. But this offensive line is also revamped; it should be improved. But at the same time, it's a new system, a lot of new faces on the offensive line, new play caller, and they're playing a really tough matchup with the Minnesota Vikings and Brian Flores, who is going to bring the juice every single week. And so I expect that to be a fun game. I'm really excited to see those 2 teams tee off. But I think the Vikings here at number 3 is a really, really good and safe play. Let's move over here to tier 2. You're going to see the Philadelphia Eagles at 4, Arizona Cardinals at 5, Commanders at 6, Jets at 7, Rams at 8, and the Patriots at 9. My defensive streamers are all sandwiched into here. And we're going to go and touch on these games right here. You have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Cowboys this week. And, that's an in-division game at home. The Eagles are favored by 7 points, 46.5 point total on this game. And we'll see what happens with Dallas with that running game. Do we see that running game be a little bit better than is being projected? Are they going to have to throw the football a ton? I think ultimately Dallas throwing the football might be better because this run defense is going to be the strong point of this team, in my opinion. That front 7, that back secondary there were some losses with Darius Slay, and so we'll see who steps up. But I like the Eagles in this spot. The talent is there, of course. Then you have the Arizona Cardinals here at 5. Look, Arizona Cardinals were a defense that I was touting as one that you need to go and draft at the end of your fantasy football drafts this season because they're practically going for free and they have a pretty good, easy schedule or a favorable schedule to start the year. They go ahead and they take on the Saints, and this is a game with the Saints that is pretty favorable. They are on the road here, 42.5 points, so they're not expecting a ton of points. It is Spencer Rattler in this game. I don't have the Cardinals higher than some of these defenses because at the end of the day, they are still going on the road, and there are still some playmakers there in New Orleans, but ultimately I think 5 is a pretty fair spot for them. Then you have the Washington Commanders, the Jets, and the Rams. We talked about both of these defenses already. I think the Commanders have a really, really solid floor because of the turnovers from Russ that we're going to get, in my opinion, and the Giants are just not going to be very good, in my opinion. Then you have the Jets at 7. I think the Jets provide a little bit a better floor than the Rams, a lower floor than the Commanders, but probably more upside than the Commanders, just because of that low point total I'm expecting in that game, and just because I also think that they can get to Rodgers and get some sacks going there. Then you have the Rams, which I talked about already. Let's move on to the Patriots. The Patriots, some people would have probably expected me to take them as a streamer this week. The New England Patriots are taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, another team with the Raiders with a ton of turnover and a ton of change, right? You have Geno Smith, who is now the new quarterback and the new face of that franchise with Brock Bowers. There's some offensive weapons and Genti. This is a pretty solid core that they have there, but there is some lacking of skill players outside of those guys. And the offensive line is not the best. But ultimately, I think they can put up some points against this New England defense. And when you look at the defense here for the Patriots, though, I think They don't really have the best pass rush here. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. They don't have the best pass rush here, but they have a really good run defense. So I think that they could, maybe hold down Genti a little bit. It's really more about can they contain the pass, right? Can they limit the explosives from a guy like Brock Bowers, and are they going to give us a lot of sacks? I don't know how many sacks, but what I do know is I don't believe there's going to be a ton of points in this game overall. And so I like them here at tier 2 behind those streamers that we talked about already today. Let's move on to tier 3. It's going to be headlined by the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers take on Seattle in this one. They are going on the road here. And I mean, with the 49ers, the defense, they did bring back Robert Saleh. So that's a plus. Robert Saleh going to call the defensive plays. They did add a lot of additions as well. They lost some players. And I know people are a little concerned about Hufanga and Greenlaw being gone, but those guys were not really healthy for them last year anyway, so I don't think it's going to make them much worse losing those players. And they also drafted and brought in a bunch of players there. But overall, when you look at them, they're facing a Seattle offense that has some changes, right? You have Cooper Kupp now in the fold. You have Sam Darnold. You have a new play caller, and I think that there could be some growing pains in this one overall. I'm targeting them as my 10th defense here in tier 3. Then you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, and look, a lot of people are on the Bengals. They're not even a streamer anymore. They're like 60 to 70% owned across fantasy formats. Bengals are -6 in this game with a 46.5 point total. And I don't have the Bengals higher just because, to be quite honest, guys, while the Browns offense might look bad, to the naked eye, I don't think they're going to be bad enough to make a shitty defense like the Bengals look good. They don't have a lot of players on the Bengals defense that's going to get to the quarterback outside of Trey Hendrickson, who just signed his contract, right? Is it going to take Hendrickson time to get up to speed? I don't know. I think he could still get a sack or two here and there. Shamar Stewart, I didn't really love some of the tape that I saw of him so far in the preseason, and they don't really have much else. It's really you're just banking on low points, maybe a Flacco to mess up a few times, and you're hoping that Hendrickson can get to the quarterback. But I actually think that game could go over at 46.5 points. I think there's a really good shot that game goes over. So that's why I don't have that much higher than 11. Then you look at the Chargers here at 12. Rashee Rice is going to be suspended and not playing in this game. I actually got the notification a couple of hours before recording this. And so no Rashee Rice should bode well for the Chargers in this one. These two teams play each other pretty tough over the last few years. And that's going to be a fun game. The Chiefs right now are favored at -3.5. With Rashee Rice suspended, though, I think there's a very solid chance that changes. But at the same time, Kansas City is the home team here. And so because they're the home team, I'm sorry, the Chargers are the home team here. So I think that could probably come to even and maybe even become a pick 'em with Rashee Rice out as we get closer to the game. There's a good chance that even flips where, the Chargers end up being the favorite. Would not surprise me. But then you have the Chiefs right there, right behind them. Another good defense there at 13. And if you look at this overall tier, there's a lot of good defenses at the bottom where it's just, they just don't have the best matchup, right? You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a lot of people are pretty high on them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers take on the Atlanta Falcons, and that matchup, they're in Atlanta, so they are traveling. Atlanta just lost their right tackle, who's the blind side to Michael Penix, McGarry, and then their swing tackles out for a few weeks too. So how does that affect that offense with a young quarterback in Michael Penix? I don't know, but I can't put them much higher. You have teams like the Houston Texans who are a really good defense. They go up against the Rams. There's a chance that the Houston Texans end up being one of, if not the best defenses in the NFL as well. They're right up there with the Broncos, in my opinion. Extremely, extremely talented defense. And Matthew Stafford, we'll see how mobile he is. We'll see what happens with the back. Still a really good offense. I can't put them much higher. Then you have the Seattle Seahawks, who get to play the 49ers here. It's a good defense overall with Seattle, right? You have Mike McDonald. They play at home. The matchup isn't amazing, but 49ers are missing some offensive players. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is gone. Who knows if Juwan Jennings is even going to be there week 1 at this point? I don't expect it. Still George Kittle, still CMC, still Ricky Pearsall. It's still a good offensive system overall, in my opinion. So I can't put them much higher, but it is an in-division game, and sometimes those get a little bit weird. And then you look at the Baltimore Ravens and the Bills, and this is why we love to stream. Both of those defenses are top 10 defenses drafted in terms of ADP right now this fantasy football season. And those defenses are low in my rankings this week because they play each other. It's a really tough matchup, and that's why I like to stream defenses, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be locked into, having to start a defense. And if you drafted the Ravens and if you drafted the Bills, you probably have to either drop them, which you're probably not going to do. You're either going to start them, which I wouldn't advise to do, or you're going to have to clog your roster and pick up another defense. And you don't want to have to waste those bench spots on a second defense, right? Nobody wants to have to do that. But that's why I have them here so low as I do. And I think that's pretty fair. I think that makes sense. Moving on to tier 4, you have the Las Vegas Raiders in this one. The Raiders, look, they take on a younger offense, right, with Drake May, Josh McDaniels there. And so I think that could cause for some opportunity for the Raiders to take advantage of. You still have Max Crosby there, who can wreak havoc. And there's some younger players. You have Morgan Moses at right tackle. You have the new kid at left tackle for LSU from LSU. And so I think Crosby can still cause some issues. But overall, I'm not super jazzed up or excited to start really any of these defenses. The New York Giants are an interesting one, a really, really strong front seven taking on Jaden Daniels. I think there could be some opportunities for some sacks there. They have seen him now 3 times, so maybe that provides you a little bit of a floor. But honestly, if I'm looking at this tier, I don't mind taking a chance at Green Bay and Detroit or even the Colts and just calling it a day and saying, because at the end of the day, those are good defenses in my opinion. At least Detroit and Green Bay will be, and they have good matchups. Green Bay plays Detroit and Detroit plays Green Bay. They don't have good matchups. They have tough matchups, but they're good defenses, right? And so you're just maybe hoping that you can get a floor there. The Indianapolis Colts is interesting. They play Miami and Miami comes on the road to them, and that could be an interesting start there. They could be a surprise defense. Devon Achane, we don't know the status. They're saying he's going to play, but we're still really not sure. If he doesn't play, that could change things for sure, and the outlook of the Colts DST for week 1. But I wouldn't mind taking a shot there. And then look, you have the Bears at 22. The Bears go up against the Minnesota Vikings. JJ McCarthy, young quarterback, in his first start in the regular season. Maybe you find some reason to go take a chance there, but I'm not super jazzed up or excited about really any of those defenses. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys aren't already, make sure you sub and subscribe to our channel. Give a like to the video. Any comments, questions, or concerns, drop them in the video below. I'll be happy to answer them up until week 1. You can also follow me on Twitter at Supernova38 with 2 R's. And then also our Discord. It's attached in the video below. Make sure you go over there. It's free to join, right? We also have some paid content and paid tiers as well, but you can hop in and get in on the conversation, because as the changes happen with these rankings and these updates, you're going to want to be in the know, and it's going to go to Discord first. So make sure you're keeping an eye out on that. I appreciate you guys watching. We are back. I'm super excited for an awesome season, and I'll see you guys next time.